Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Hardcore Survival Guide. I really need mending. Mending is basically a must-have enchantment now that we have a decent set of diamond tools and armor, and of course we're going to go for more netherite, which means more durability, but mending is pretty much going to be a must-have. And so, at this point, our villager population has been maxed out in terms of jobs. There are no unemployed villagers left in this area, and so we need to start thinking about breeding villagers. Now, I don't intend to rely on these villagers for our entire run of hardcore here. I will probably end up moving out of the village at some point and moving on to other project areas, and so I'm not going to worry too much about making a permanent villager breeder. We are going to do that in a future episode, but probably in a different area. For now, what I tend to prefer doing is working with a free-range village, and the best way to do a free-range village in terms of expanding the population is just to throw down a few more beds and make sure they are well fed. And luckily for us, feeding villagers is dead easy. Does this hoe have fortune? It does. Awesome. Let's use that to farm some of these crops, because a fortune hoe used on crops like carrots or potatoes will give you more of the carrots and potatoes. There we go. From just those few patches, I ended up getting 28 carrots, some of which we can replant here, and we'll work on getting some sort of farm set up for the carrots a little bit later. But for now, we can throw a few of these to villagers. They'll start redistributing them amongst each other, and hopefully that will end up with some babies being made. There are only a couple of factors that make villagers willing to breed, one of which is trading with them a whole bunch, which we've clearly done with most of these villagers. The other one is making sure they are well fed. So carrots, potatoes, bread, any of that stuff, if you throw it to a villager, will make them in the mood to breed, provided they have enough food. By the way, the reason I'm not including the beetroots and wheat in this equation is because if you fortune any of the beets or the wheat, they actually come with seeds separate to the crop itself. So obviously with wheat you get wheat seeds, with beets you get beet seeds. And what that ultimately means is fortune multiplies the amount of seeds but only gets you one of the actual products. So for 7 wheat I got 7 wheat sheaves and then about 30 wheat seeds. For the beets I got 4 beetroot and 18 seeds. So generally speaking, I don't like to use them as crops. They're really not all that great to replant. You don't end up multiplying the crop itself, you end up multiplying the seeds, and I don't find that very useful. And I'm also going to stash away some of the other produce that I brought back from the nether. We might get into potion brewing a little bit later as well, but I think the focus of this episode is going to be breeding some villagers up, getting hold of mending for our equipment, and then focusing on some early game farms. And a couple of bone meal per crop here will expand our carrot farm to the point where I can harvest a bunch of these with my fortune hoe, like so, and now we have enough carrots to basically replant this entire field. I'll toss the remaining carrots to these villagers, hopefully 1 or 2 of them will pick them up, and once the workday ends and the meeting time begins, you'll see them all start to mill around the village centre over there by the bell, and sooner or later, the ones that have been given food might show some heart particles indicating that they are willing to breed. If we don't see any heart particles soon, then chances are they just haven't had enough food yet, and we need to farm a little bit more food and give it out to the village's population. But if we want to expand the village's population, the basic equation is food plus beds equals baby villagers. Once they've had enough food, the village should try and expand the population until all of the beds in the village are filled. And at that point, they might still try to breed, but you'll see the heart particles turn into storm clouds, which means they can't breed right now because there's not enough room in the village. Right now, though, it looks like we aren't getting any heart particles, which probably just means the villagers don't have enough food yet. So I'm going to go and farm some more carrots, and I'll see you guys in a second. And a short time later, I wasn't even around when it happened, but we have a small newcomer to the community. And of course, young villagers look more or less like a scaled down version of the adult villagers, and they will run around in the village causing havoc, jumping on beds, and generally having a wonderful time. Naturally, they can't get a job for a little while, and so we're going to be waiting for this mischievous chap to grow up into a full-size villager before we can assign him an occupation, but for that, we'll need ourselves another lectern, because he's going to be a second librarian. And just so he takes the hint once he grows up, because I'm not certain I'll be around to watch that, we are going to place another lectern right there, and hopefully, once he grows up, he's going to immediately pair to that workstation. He's already getting kind of an apprenticeship from the librarian here. And in the meantime, I'm going to take down my temporary sugarcane farm from up here on the hill, because this farming area is getting a bit chaotic and it's getting in the way of the other stuff that I want to do. I've been farming a few extra trees on my live streams, and that's pretty much all I've been doing on my live streams actually, which is why my axe is in such a poor state of repair. But what I would really like to do is expand this area around the village into an area that looks a little bit more like the Shire. Since we've gone with the hobbit hole idea, I feel like we can probably make more hobbit hole facades for other things that I want to build in this area, like, for example, a sugarcane farm. And rather than work our way up through a variety of sugarcane farms until we arrive at the lossless one, we're going to skip straight ahead to building a lossless sugarcane farm right away. And I want to build the sugarcane farm across from our hobbit hole, which means we're probably going to finally have to deal with this cave. And I'm kind of happy at this point that I have enough gear that I can just shoot these creepers from a distance with a bow, take down the remaining zombie with my sword, and it looks like we are all good in here, actually. We've got a little bit of dark space to light up, but for the most part, this cave is going to be relatively safe, and looks like it is getting dark outside, so we're going to have to go and sleep. One danger of increasing a village's population above a certain size is that it can trigger a zombie siege when night falls, and just after the sun dips below the horizon, a ton of zombies will spawn near the village perimeter and potentially try and attack the villagers. They will also try and attack you, of course, at which point you can try and fend them off, but it can be a little bit overwhelming on hard difficulty, so I would prefer for that not to happen if at all possible. So we're not going to breed up too many villagers here today. We should be okay with a couple more, but aside from the Mending librarian, we don't really need that many. The good news is there's plenty more iron in this cave if I need to come back through and replenish my stores of that, although this sugarcane farm that I'm planning to build should not really take that much iron. In fact, the main thing that's going to require iron here is the output mechanism, because it's going to require hoppers to get all of the items into this chest. But we can basically split these in two directions. We've got one going this way, we've got another line now going this way, and attached to alternate hoppers here, we're basically going to have machines set up to farm sugarcane for us back to back. And it looks like our junior villager has taken after his father in his complete inability to get out of this house. But he has become a librarian, and he is currently trading Sweeping Edge 1. Okay, we'll do something about that, but we'll do that in a second. So the way we're going to set up this farm is as follows. We'll need 8 powered rails and 1 regular rail. We'll need the sugarcane and some sand or dirt to grow it on. We're going to need a little bit of redstone dust, a repeater, and some observers. Now, this can be as few as 2 observers for this design, but you might want to have an observer for basically every piece of sugarcane you're going to grow here. We're going to start out by placing 1 powered rail on top of this hopper, a regular rail next to it, and then 7 rail along the side here, ending at the wall. Of course, we're going to dig down below this and place a lever on the underside of one of these blocks so that the rail is powered. You can obviously do this with any redstone power source. You can bury a redstone block in there if you want to, but right now we'll just use a lever because they're cheap and easy. Next thing we want to do is place 8 sand along the top of those powered rail and the regular rail, leaving a space at the end here, and that's where the minecart is going to return to every time it gathers some sugarcane. Next up, we're going to dig a trench behind this sand, and that's where we're going to place a single water bucket. Going in any direction, we're going to have it going from this end down this way. It should run to a total of 8 blocks and then stop, and now that's going to allow us to place the sugarcane. Sugarcane doesn't have to be placed next to a water source, it can be flowing water as well. Across the back here, we're going to be placing a row of solid blocks. Can be any solid block you like, but I'm going to put 2 shroom lights in here as light sources to make sure the farm is nice and well lit. Next up, we're going to grab a bunch of cobblestone and we're going to craft 8 pistons. Well, I got 9 from that, but we're only going to need 8. We're going to hop up here and place the pistons along the back row facing inwards towards the sugarcane. Now, behind this, of course, we're going to place a row of observers facing in towards the sugarcane. We grab a little bit of redstone dust, and behind the pistons here, we're going to be placing a row of solid blocks with redstone dust traveling across the top of them, so that the entire back row here is filled up like that. And we're not going to get anything spawning in this space, so don't worry if it's kind of dark. The last thing we're going to place on this row is an observer facing downwards, which are always a little bit tricky to place, but there we go. We're going to put one last piece of redstone dust on top of that, and we're going to make sure there is a block directly underneath that in the form of this set of oak planks for now. We're going to leave a space, place another set of oak planks there. We're going to put some redstone dust on top of that, turn around and place a redstone repeater set to 3 ticks. Right-clicking on it a couple of times will extend the duration that that redstone repeater stays on for. Now we place our minecart hopper on the end here, and the farm is basically ready for action, give or take the fact that I want to put a piece on the front here to block any sugarcane from falling out of it. Basically how this is going to work, if I can grab a couple more sugarcane I'll be able to show you, is that every time a sugarcane grows up in front of the observer, all of these pistons are going to fire thanks to the fact that they're all connected by redstone dust at the back. At the same time, that redstone dust triggers this observer here, which triggers the redstone repeater, powering that rail and sending this hopper minecart off on its collection cycle. As with the hopper minecarts collecting stuff for our storage system, they will pick up any items that are above this solid block that they're running over. So as you can see right here, it picks up the 2 planks and the shears that I've left up there, and those end up in the output chest along with the sugarcane that I've been using to demonstrate. And so now with some glass that we're going to buy from the librarians, we can just wall this off and then start another farm immediately opposite it so that we're using as little space as possible to create a decent sized sugarcane farm. One added bonus, by the way, is that in 1.17, rails are no longer affected by water in the way that they used to be. So even if you end up breaking this, it's no longer going to break any of your rail, meaning it's much easier to fix farms like this if the water gets out. And building up another layer of the farm is basically the same process repeated again, except this time we have a little bit more room to work with because we're not carving out the wall of this cave. And copying the circuit over to the opposite side is just a matter of mirroring the entire thing. It's worth bearing in mind that this observer here is going to power this block, which means that hopper underneath is going to be locked, but that will be temporary. The redstone pulse is very brief and it should allow the hopper to unlock again very quickly. We need a couple more hopper minecarts, but aside from that, we are pretty much good to go here. And honestly, you could remove most of the observers from this and just have one sugarcane be detected by the observer if you wanted to save on materials. The rest of those could just end up being solid blocks. But at the end of the day, it's worth it just so that as soon as any piece of sugarcane grows, it immediately gets harvested. Some of them, like this piece on the end here, might not have fully grown by the time the machine ends up harvesting all of the other pieces, but at least you're going to make sure that as soon as one grows to a certain height, you're getting as much sugarcane as you can from that cycle. And we're going to close off the ends of the machine here with glass, just so it's nice and contained and no sugarcane escapes. We'll probably end up putting some kind of organized roof over the entire thing as well, so I can do what I want with the layer above and make sure the machine here remains preserved. But this looks like it's just about ready to fire. Just so the whole thing looks a little bit neater, I'm going to basically fill in the glass wall at the end here and put a little bit more filler material around the outside, which shouldn't disrupt the running of the farm at all. Just going to make sure everything looks nice and neat from the outside. And while we're waiting for this to complete its first harvest, I'm actually going to start on the next one over, which is going to share a redstone line with this one here. We're going to save on resources by doing that, and while these pistons will fire at the same time as these ones, which might mean we occasionally get an unnecessary harvest, it is going to mean that the entire module stays a little bit neater. And honestly, it doesn't matter if these things fire too often, because they're not going to prevent the sugarcane from growing by firing once and then retracting again. And there we go. It looks like that part of the machine just fired, and hopefully the minecart should have retrieved. Yes, there we go. And it produced exactly 9, which means we can turn that into 9 paper, and that's going to mean 3 books. And it sounds like the other half of the machine just went, and you could see that one there got collected, and it looks like we're going to get another 9 sugarcane. Fantastic. So that's going to make for 18 paper in total. And while it may not feel like a whole lot right now, that's going to run in the background while we do a ton more work around this area, and that's going to be basically our sugarcane farm for the rest of the series, I expect. All that's left to do is copy the circuit over onto this side, and we'll have twice the amount, and you could basically make this as large as you want, depending on whether you have the resources to do that. Now that's taken care of, let's go and check in with our brand new librarian villager. Because he was selling me a sweeping edge book, but now we can break and replace his lectern, and the second one comes up mending, although that's pretty expensive for a mending trade, so I'll probably try and re-roll to get a slightly cheaper price. I don't know if it's still possible to get it this cheap, but I have seen mending go for 6 emeralds before. They may have changed some of the weighting of the prices, but honestly, I think it's worth re-rolling this a few more times until we get a better mending trade. Oh, mending came up for 36 emeralds again, so I do wonder if maybe they've changed the price of this, or maybe I'm just getting appalling luck. Finally, 16 emeralds. It's not the cheapest I've seen, but it's definitely sounding better. Now all I need to do is go and grab some more sticks so I can trade with the Fletcher. He should keep that trade until I come back to him, though. It's not a big problem. And boom, there we go. We have 1 mending book locked in with that trade. Fantastic. Now I should be able to get at least 1 more if I can trade the rest of these. And where'd the guy go? There he is. My new best friend, 2 mending books. Well, the first one of those is going on this axe immediately because it is on its last legs, but then after that I think one of the pickaxes is probably due for that. There we go, Mending goes on the axe for 2 XP levels, and I think we'll put it on the Fortune pickaxe for now because it doesn't have Unbreaking yet, and then it can basically heal itself as we mine stuff like coal, redstone, quartz, etc. Oh, I'm so happy that we finally have Mending in this world. It's probably an enchantment that I've been holding off for too long on getting hold of, but now we have our set of tools that will hopefully last us for the rest of the playthrough, provided that we survive, and I just need to get a few more mending trades under my belt to get it on the armor and the rest of the tools as well. But we may as well finish what we set out to do. I'm not going to do the facade today, but we're at least going to get the rest of this sugarcane farm built out, so I need to go away and get some more redstone dust, craft a few extra observers, get some more sand, and finish off this whole project. And we return to a fully operational double module sugarcane farm, and I like the way this came together. It does look kind of like a koala to me. I don't know if it looks that way to you guys, but I just see 2 big eyes, a nose there, a little mouth with a red tongue, and then, of course, 18 sugarcane left in the chest. I'm actually going to leave that in there for now because we all probably want to do more stuff with that a little bit later. But I wanted to talk a little bit, now that we have Mending, about sources of XP, because a question I often get is how I end up using Mending on my tools that have things like Silk Touch, where typically you don't end up harvesting resources that heal your tools as you go because you're not getting XP from ore blocks the same way you are with Fortune. And I think this question comes a lot from Bedrock Edition players, because a lot of the time on Java it's as simple as putting whatever tool you have in your offhand and Mending will still work there. Mending works on any equipment that you currently have equipped, so whether it's in your offhand, your main hand, or your armor slots, any XP you gather will go to any of the items that have Mending before it starts accruing in your XP levels bar. But Bedrock Edition players unfortunately do not have the luxury of holding anything they want in their offhand. It's limited to only a few items, and so you need some alternative ways of getting XP. Well, one good way of doing that is through furnaces. Blast furnaces, smokers, any furnace variant, anything that smelts items will then give you an output. Once you take the items out of the output, then that's going to give you some XP, and depending on how rare the item you're smelting is, the more XP you get. So iron, gold, and copper are all good examples of ores that are going to give you some pretty nice XP on the output. And an interesting factor about this is on Bedrock Edition, furnaces are actually kind of bugged, and if you set them up with an automatic hopper output, but you put a lever on the furnace, or put a lever near the hopper that allows you to lock it with a redstone signal, any single item that you take out of the blast furnace or smoker or whatever it is will actually give you the XP that furnace has accrued over its entire lifespan every time you take one item out of the furnace. That only works on Bedrock Edition, so Java Edition players don't worry too much about that. There are other ways that you guys can get XP, but if you play on Bedrock, that's a really important trick because you can hold whatever item in your main hand without having to worry about the offhand stuff, and that's going to repair your Silk Touch pickaxe or axe or whatever item you use. Now, don't get me wrong, furnaces are still a reasonable source of XP on Java Edition, and there are farms you can set up, like, for example, a cactus farm, which will allow you to put items through a furnace almost constantly, allowing you to accrue XP in the background, and once you're ready to collect the XP, you simply grab an item out of that output slot, and it gives you a ton of XP, pretty much mending your tools in their entirety. You'll notice my diamond axe right now has 205 durability. Once I take the iron out of here, all of that goes to the axe, and I now have 223 durability. It's not a whole lot for 12 bars of iron, but it's still a little bit of repair. Another option could be to domesticate one of the mob spawner dungeons that you find throughout the world, and we might end up converting this zombie spawner dungeon at some point into something that we can use as a more permanent XP farm, but frankly, I find them a little bit slow compared to the output of a general mob spawner that's just a dark room in the sky generating a ton of mobs at a time, and a lot of people like to use those as their first basic XP farms. There are, of course, a few renowned XP farms for late game, like a Zombie Pigman gold farm on the roof of the Nether, or an Ender in the End dimension, but I think in the meantime there are some better sources of XP in the overworld, and frankly, once again, it is villagers. If I trade with this Fletcher, once again, durability on my axe right now, 223. I've got a decent inventory full of sticks. With my axe in that hand, if I trade my way through all of these sticks, that's back up to 379 right away. I trade with another Fletcher, that's going to leap another 150 or so durability. Yep, we're back up to 551 there, and that's definitely more durability regained than it takes to chop down enough trees to trade that amount of sticks. So ultimately, we're gaining XP pretty fast. Now, I don't know what either of these suspicious stews are, but it's worth giving them a try just in case, and if I eat this one, we're about to get a completely random status effect. Let's see what that is. Okay, that one was weakness. Good to know. That was the first one he traded. How about the second one? That is poison. Okay, good. This guy sells weakness and poison stews. Wonderful. Just gonna throw both of those into the well and probably never speak of them again. Back on the cookie and apple diet for me. But once we get to one of the later trades with this farmer, we should be able to trade golden carrots from him. And that's really what I'm after from this guy. I'm gonna do a few more stick trades to get some more emeralds. And right now we're on 911 durability with our diamond axe. This guy's now giving me discounts on cookies, which is wonderful. And now he's through the expert phase into master. He is now selling us golden carrots for 2 emeralds, and he's giving us 3 golden carrots per trade. Let's see what we're at. 939. Let's see how many durability we come away from this with. There we go. We traded 36 golden carrots and we now have 1,055 durability. So with a few villager trades there and some very useful stuff that we got in hold of, give or take all of the cookies, which are called biscuits because I play with the UK language pack. That's kind of hilarious. With just a few quick villager trades, my axe is 2/3 of the way repaired from where it was before. Almost completely broken before. It is now a very functional axe once again. And I think that's another thing that makes villagers very much worth keeping around in the early game. We'll obviously step outside of the village at some point and go and make some better XP farms elsewhere, but I think in the meantime, these guys are fantastic to trade with, and I'm going to spend the rest of my day repairing these tools. But now I'm on the golden carrot diet. We have renewable food pretty much permanently as well, and I need to find something to do with all of these cookies. But for now, I think in front of our sugarcane farm here, that is where I'm going to leave it for this episode of the Hardcore Survival Guide. Folks, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching the Hardcore Survival Guide. Don't forget to leave a like on the episode for me if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.